Welcome, Dash Force News, Three Amigos podcast, your daily wonderful Friday edition. And we got a special guest in this room. Say hi, Justin.
Hey, everybody.
So Justin has been the wizard behind just about half of the articles that have been coming out on Dash Force News lately. Sharp guy, good work ethic, puts out quality content, and I figured there's a lot like the three of us tend to be the people that everyone sees for Dash Force. But there's so many other people working behind the scenes. There's dozens of translators. We got a few different writers. We got, of course, Albert, who's working on Discover Dash and some of the merchant adoption stuff and the meetups. And he got his time in the limelight a few times. But so, yeah, now we're roping in Justin.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for those kind words, Joel. I've moved to New Hampshire about a year ago. I knew about cryptocurrency a little bit before I moved here, but not that much. Once I got here, got vastly more experience and knowledge. And it's been a pleasure to work with Dash ever since. I was brought on board a few weeks ago. Love Dash. I love how useful it is. I love applying my economics knowledge to Dash and just talking about how wonderful it is.
Well, that's interesting because that's what interests me about you is your background. You went to the London School of Economics, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, I studied at University of Pittsburgh, and then I went to London School of Economics, took some economics courses there. And I just had a blast. The professors there and the knowledge was just unbelievable. It's just leaps and bounds beyond what I learned in the US.
Well, us Brits.
Speaks well for the UK education system, which I've also been through. My postgraduate was at the University of Buckingham. So there's, I guess, three people who went to uni in the UK.
Hashtag think about it.
Yeah. Sorry. It does take you pretty far.
When did you get into Dash, Justin?
Actually, just when I moved up here to New Hampshire. Is mostly because everyone I met here started talking about Dash. And it's like, oh, do you use Dash? Do you use Dash? And before then, I really just heard about Bitcoin. But everyone up here exposed me to Dash. And then I heard about so many times, I started looking into it myself. And I was like, wow, this really has a great setup and great system behind it to make it useful and make it allow people to use it in everyday purchases and sales. And I was like, I can really get behind this technology.
Now, what year was that?
Yeah, I was asking. So you people in your community were asking, and what year? Yeah.
This is the amazing thing about living in New Hampshire. Just downtown Portsmouth, right down the way, 25 businesses take Dash. I can go to old soda fountain, get an ice cream for Dash. I can go to a bunch of different restaurants. I can go pay for my yoga, get my acai bowls, whatever the hell you want. Like this is competing with Venezuela for ground zero of where we see Dash actually being used as it was intended.
The best part is buying beer with Dash. It has to be the most fun.
Yeah, what year was it? What year did you go there?
This was 2017.
Wow.
So last year.
Because I've been impressed with your knowledge when you're doing the articles and stuff. You pull up stuff from stuff that people have been in the community that were writing for us for a long time are not able to tie together stuff from the past. It's very impressive.
Oh, wow, thank you.
Yeah, so we in the live chat, Todd Warner says Justin went to Pitt. I went there for a couple of years.
Hail to Pitt.
Yeah, so for someone Todd Warner is another one of our writers. He's a sheep farmer. He has a sheep is his profile picture. And as Hans is asking, what point of sale do they use there in New Hampshire? It's anypay.global. The local, the Free State Bitcoin shop down in Portsmouth, the owner of that developed the point of sale. It's basically a copy of the BitPay front-end interface. And it's a very slick, smooth point of sale system. It accepts a few coins, but defaults to Dash. And it's crypto only, though. It just sends to you can put in whatever Dash address. However, that's the impressive bit is all these businesses around the state that take Dash, they don't convert it. They just take it and hold it, which, time like the last couple months has been a little bit rough. So it's a rough one, right? But it's obviously over time, it goes really up. And that's one thing that I'm trying to get someone to experiment with this. You should be able to jury rig a really good crypto to fiat point of sale system with AnyPay by putting your address as your uphold address. And then at the end of the day, you convert it to your USD card, and then like once a month or whenever you do like pay the $4 to transfer it to your bank. So we're basically on the cusp of being able to do a wide merchant adoption push for Dash. I'm pretty excited about that.
It's a good hack.
Yeah, man. And we haven't even introduced our second guest, man of the hour, Chuck, #DoTheMath Williams.
That's not his hashtag.
I was just trying to trigger. Chuck hates it when I do that, so I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, I don't like all the marketees.
Yeah. There's only enough room for one Dash cheerleader, and I could be a bit overbearing. Anyway, Chuck, man of the hour. Like, there's been so many video interviews on YouTube of you just popping up left, right, center. Even today, I was talking to someone asking about getting you on their channel. So we had the Dash Core update from last week, talking about the roadmap, evolution. And one of the biggest questions in the community is that they heard you, which I think was recorded at an Acapulco, but released later on the crypto show. And at the end, you dropped a little golden nugget at the end where you're saying that there's going to be some kind of testnet dev release, like
so
summertime.
What we're working on, I've been working on the terminology for it, but I think what I'm calling it now is a full stack mock prototype. So with this full stack,
the full stack mock prototypes.
Yeah, that sounds like a great band. I would totally go see those guys. But yeah, no, that's what the team has been working on. It's been a team-wide effort. It has taken, the back-end team to rally. It has taken the front-end team to come together, and we're all meeting. We have been meeting for months, pretty regularly, trying to build out prototypes that work for us from a merchant developer perspective, but also from a blockchain developer perspective. And so what we have. What we're on the cusp of delivering is a prototype that the community can look at and review and say, okay, here's what we've done. There's some things that we want, before we release the technical details, we want to put some protections in place. And so if we release too much, it becomes not patentable, basically. Yeah. So we're trying to time some of that, but also we want to put a video out this month that kind of demonstrates the full stack prototype. What it demonstrates is it's a proof of concept that allows us to see the capabilities of evolution and use the foundations of the platform in a way that is demonstrative for future developers of the world. So, I
when
think
you're
it's going to
talking
be
about the patents,
yeah,
a lot of people don't understand that. They think, why do we need patents? No one else patents stuff. Or they think, well, what are you trying to patent? You're trying to steal things. This should be open source, free for the world, man. What's the big fear, or what's the big thing to be avoided that makes? What are you trying to avoid by doing this?
So yeah, the fear from Core is that somebody else will patent what we release and prevent us from using it, and thereby disable our network. That is the number one fear.
That's pretty terrible.
Yeah, but it's possible. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen, because we believe that what we are working on and what we will deliver is patentable, should be patented, and should be protected in some ways, just because we have a patent system. Personally, I would prefer not to interact with anything like the patent system. But somebody could patent the idea and then basically prevent us from using it. So we have to make sure that doesn't happen at a minimum. The rest of it's going to be released MIT open source. I mean, all of it's going to be released MIT open source. So that's a continued commitment. It's just a matter of making sure that what is open source is usable by the world.
So Evan put out a demo a couple of years ago. What's going to be the difference?
Longer than that. It was 2015.
Yeah, I can't give you a tit for tat like comparison, but one of the foundational things that has changed between then and now is that blockchain user accounts, user names on the blockchain are becoming first-class citizens. And so that fundamentally changes how some of the stuff works, including what Evan had prototyped and demoed. And also it means that because we're doing something at so close to the metal, as I would call it, like it's so much embedded in the protocol that most people really won't understand the effects until we start building on top of that idea. And so that's why we want to deliver what we're calling a DApp, our first DApp, decentralized application protocol, which is the Evolution wallet, whatever we call it at that point.
Yeah. So you're
What are you calling it?
It's not up to me.
Question. So you did the copay. Is the copay done, and you're waiting on that before you start working on Evolution?
Copays, no. So basically what I've done is we brought some people on to take over the Copay project and get it out the door into production. And I've over the past couple of weeks shifted my focus away from Copay 100% onto Evolution.
Excellent.
Right now, I'm staring at the product requirements for Evolution and going over and testing and doing research for feasibility and working through designs and considering prototypes and all that kind of stuff right now.
So how long do you think that will take you to do all that stuff? Is it we're talking about months, or you can make it happen? I don't know.
So this is where I'm gonna say, look, how long is a really difficult thing. There's a great Freakonomics episode that was just recently released that is titled "Here's Why All Your Projects Are Always Late and What to Do About It." So the best thing that I can tell you about how long it's going to take as long as it takes, like painting the Sistine Chapel. But we are committed to start showing the world progress. And there's a general team or team-wide agreement across core that we definitely want to start, we've heard the message, like there's need for something. Show us what you're working on.
To quote that Rick and Morty episode, show me what you got.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think many of us on the team are individually committed to getting something out the door that we all agree is appropriate, that doesn't put any of our innovations at risk from a protection perspective, but also satiates the community's desire for progress.
Well, last we heard that they said that we're still on time for the June timeframe, so I would guess it would be months. Is that right? Or?
Yeah, it depends on how you interpret the definition of on time and what exactly is delivered. But what I'm understanding our goals is to get something out that can be publicly reviewed by developers. In an ideal world, that will be connected with a testnet version, but we may release something that is not directly connected with a functioning testnet. But we've just in the past few weeks completed a version of the software where you can spin up a local devnet and spin and connect up with the devnet. So you can get mined blocks, and then you can spin up a local masternode, and then you can start developing against that mock masternode layer. So we've got the full stack, mostly worked out from a design perspective and from a proof of concept perspective. And that's what we want to show.
It's not like there's going to be a disconnect though, because this is actually going to be the first time. I mean, if you're going to release a video by the end of the month, we're going to be able to follow your progress, right? Or just with the idea. So it's not like everyone's going to be kept out the loop. So is this just going to be a one video, or are you planning to do a series of videos once a month to keep us in the loop, progress?
Yeah, I mean, we want to start this one. It's going to be me and Joshua. We did a test take last week and it didn't come out so well, so we're going to re-record it this next week, and then it won't be very well produced, and hopefully that will improve over time. I don't think anybody on our team is really big into video, so but yeah, that's the plan. We want to make monthly commitments, I think, from the front end team's perspective, and my hope is that our team will be an example for the other teams here at Dash, so that they can start putting out what would be appropriate from a video perspective from what they're producing also. And I think that that's something that would really create a bond between core and the community.
So will there be a first iteration of Evolution that the community will be able to use by the end of the year?
I think that's a very strong likelihood. From my perspective, we're trying to keep the scope to something that is in fact deliverable, but also fulfills the basic expectations and demonstrates the enhanced functionality of pay by name, and is something that developers can use to start coding on. So that's kind of that's the loose goals right now. Give something that merchant developers and end users can use. And I'm shooting for early to mid summer, but I can't account for everybody else's work. There's going to be a lot that needs to come together to make that happen. So
yeah, so I'll to sort of explain the reason why there's been a lot of impatience. Of course, everyone's impatient for stuff, part of the thing is, Dash has had constant updates and constant innovations over the years. There has been, since for about 3 years going, this promised land, this nirvana of like, it's all going to be over when evolution's out. Everything is going to be amazing. Everything's going to be changed. And what people haven't seen maybe is all this, like everything that happens in between. There have been some really cool things happening, like the continual reduction of fees, the block size increase, all kinds of different improvements and bug fixes, and not to mention all these other developments. Like when I started paying attention to Dash, there was no iPhone wallets at all. And then there was, Jax was the one that was on iPhone. And then now you got a better one. And then there was also no multi-sig wallets. And now we're getting with Copay. There's like a lot of good stuff happening over the years, but people are ignoring that because all they see is they got sold on evolution. This is going to be the best. And then they're selling and they're just waiting for that thing. And so I have a feeling that unless it's not a major letdown, as soon as something comes out that's different and better than other stuff out there, that'll let people breathe more and focus on what Dash is going to be useful for at that point. And then other upgrades that can be, even if they take it forever, it's like, well, when are we going to have, savings accounts? When are we going to have recurring payments? When are we going to have all these other kind of things? That's not going to be as pressing. I mean, maybe it was just Evan getting into his head and being like, this is going to be so incredible and amazing. And he just starts talking about this concept of evolution. And people like maybe start talking too much too quickly and people got hyped up. But the big thing that I want to know is, I mean, I kind of know, but if you could articulate, how much has the scope of evolution changed since it was first kind of announced and Evan was doing those, I'm going to pay AOU, which I don't know how you picked that name, but in the early demos, I'm going to pay him this, and like that basic username. Since that stage, what has changed with the scope, or just more importantly, like how many times bigger is it now?
Yeah, so that's the big thing is, in exploring the uncertain land of delivering what merchant developers might need to talk to Dash and what end users need to make it easy for the mass audience to come on. We have discovered, I think, as a team, some limitations in the protocol itself. So and I had to be convinced of this. There was much internal argument about basically bringing blockchain usernames as a first-class citizen onto the protocol. So that one decision, that needed to be, a lot of people needed to be convinced of it, including myself, that was the right way to go. And so that changed
what is everything. That? First off, who decided that in the team? Like who was one of the major pushers for that? And then second, what does that really mean? I kind of get what you mean, but can you explain what was the second class citizen before?
That came from Evan and Andy, as far as I know. So they had been kind of hashing out a lot of ideas. They'd seen a number of efforts fail, and gotten feedback about how and why some of those efforts had failed, and started to think about this idea of an API, something that was very Stripe-like. But the Stripe-like idea started to fall down when we saw how even in that format, such as Uphold and BlockCipher, right? They provide very usable APIs, but even that didn't seem to close the gap. It seems my conclusion from what they're delivering is that this movement to these blockchain usernames on the blockchain it makes it protocol accessible from a human readable perspective, which kind of changes the whole game, and you can build all kinds of things that you just could not build or cannot build in an environment where you don't have that. Everything else is a workaround, and those workarounds are too much of a lift for most developers and end users. So we're trying to close that gap.
The username first, kind of the first class citizen approach to that, is not going to be super obvious how much better it is to the general public right away, but it will be super obvious to anyone trying to integrate into the Dash platform. Is that
Yeah, and that's why I've said in the past that I think people are initially going to be disappointed because they'll be like, "Oh, this is it? What? It just works like a Twitter account now? Oh, great!" And I'll be like, "Yeah, that's it."
Yeah, well, that's the challenge, right? Is obviously people like myself are in the business of developing and maintaining narratives, and part of that, in order to, like, for example, when people say, with people are talking about, SegWit and the Lightning Network and stuff like that for Bitcoin, people say, people have been hyping that up forever. And like, what did SegWit concretely do in terms of like capacity increase? Basically nothing, right? Nothing, very negligible.
Yeah, seems negligible.
But the narrative control really pushed that this was an amazing upgrade, is going to do everything, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, to the degree that people were accusing Dash of not being innovative because they weren't taking it on.
Yeah, of course. Now that's the thing though, is if it's just, hey, look, you have wallets and usernames, I know for me, I can sell that feature very, very well because that changes everything. I've done demos in conferences before, like at Liberty Forum, where I said, hey, I'm going to send you some Dash. What's your address? And like, what X, lowercase x, and set, like, you can't, that doesn't work. But if you just say, at the Diamond Dasher, whatever, whatever the stupid username they come up with,
hashtag Chuck.
I can sell the usability and the value of that very well. But now when you're talking about all this like back-end stuff, you're talking about the merchant integration thing. I think that needs to be really well articulated in advance, so people, when it comes out, that's almost the main selling point. It isn't just the username.
Yep.
So
that's what. So that's why we're targeting these dual audiences of merchant developers and end users, and I'm trying to work out what kinds of deliverables we need in order to make that merchant developer part attractive. And so far it's coming down to documentations, tutorials, demos, how to build what we built from the ground up, and I think providing some level of access to the core team to those developers. But that's big picture. So I guess that's the kind of stuff that I'm thinking about right now as I author these requirements.
Are you working with any payment processors at the moment as you develop the DAPI?
Honestly, that was one of the first things that I started to work on when I came on to Dash. I wanted to bring credit card processing onto the website, and there were so many regulatory and logistical hurdles. In addition to not being in a legal position to even be able to close those deals from a foundation's perspective, we just couldn't do it. It was just impossible. I would definitely like to reapproach all of that once we have a platform that enables things like decentralized exchanges and other third parties to take on the risks of credit card processing and integrations like that will be very much more easy. Yeah, I'm anticipating that.
Problem, because I was talking to someone yesterday that's associated or connected to one of a very, very big POS solution, talking lots and lots of merchants in all types of different industries.
I'm at the point now where I want to get in touch with these guys and see about, what can you show us? What problems are you dealing with? Where can we collaborate? Those kinds of things. I don't know how that works right now. I've been making a lot of connections though, but not specifically in the credit card and POS industry. I definitely want to talk to Alt36 though.
Yeah, because I think there's this misconception that I think when people think Evolution is going to launch, there's going to be, maybe people envision like the kind of PayPal solution where online websites can all of a sudden add like a, pay with Dash through Evolution. But the thing is, for the merchant side of it, you need to have the fiat conversion on the back end. So you need these payment processors to use the DAPI to integrate into that. So before you spoke about creating documentation for developers, but it would kind of make sense to work side by side with some examples, because although you're setting up a platform and a decentralized API for developers to use, while you're developing that, it'll be good to have people to test that, because they may think of things that you may not have, or like may have needs and wants, and it just makes sense, because then from the get-go when you launch, you've got something.
So I'll be honest with you, that's bullet point number 4 on my requirements document, which is we need to consider and explore all of these ecosystem elements that we're going to need in order to fulfill these specific gaps of functionality that we anticipate. We're not going to be able to do it all, but we certainly want to enable those who have the wherewithal and business know-how and or relationships and connections to pull those kinds of projects together. And I'm certainly confident that if the Masternode network wouldn't fund those kinds of projects, that core team would assist with those also. And in that vein, we're talking about code bounties, and things like that. These are just ideas that we're throwing around right now, but things where we can say, okay, here's the functionality, next piece that we need. If you can do this, we'll hook you up with this bounty.
Yeah, now there's a question in the live chat about the naming of evolution. So we've been hearing about, evolution, this and that for years. And then relatively recently, a few months ago, it was revealed that evolution was a code name. And obviously, the final name is not quite for public release yet. The thing that we're kind of trying to wrap our heads around is it going to be called something concretely? It's like it's going to be the Dash future platform, or is it just going to be called the Dash platform, and then the wallet's going to be just called the Dash Pay wallet or something like that? And
yeah, I'm not thinking about that right now. I think everybody on the team is pretty focused on, we're just using it. We're using the word evolution as, okay, we know that it's made up of these parts. We know which part you're responsible for and which part I'm responsible for. But each of these will probably be segregated into, multiple products. And I don't know if they're going to be marketed separately to different audiences or if it's going to be one big thing. I don't know. But, I can tell you that I feel like we're beefing up our strategic and marketing arms. Where we're becoming, the team is migrating away from a overly technical group to a more balanced group of technology, business, and marketing. So that, but I don't know any of that answer that's happening right now. I'm not sure how that's happening. I would ask my strategy and marketing guys, what's the plan here?
Yeah. So I guess the end user who doesn't hear about Dash before this comes out, will they have any clue what evolution will be, or is it just it's all Dash to them? It's like the Dash, and then they got this piece and that.
Yeah,
piece.
I think it's just going to be Dash. I hope it's as simple as that's just what Dash is. Like, do you PayPal? Like, it'll be a verb. Like it'll just be something that you have Dash. Do you use Dash? Are you a Dasher?
I'm pretty confident that it's going to be Dash Pay because they've already got all the usernames and social media and everything else. It's kind of like they've done it beforehand already.
Yeah, I know. There has been a slew of new web addresses and URLs that have been purchased. I don't know all of them, but I know that there's been a bunch.
Yeah, at the same time, I kind of agree with what you're saying because there's still this whole rebranding thing going on. And one of the updates as well from Core was that they're going to be talking to the masternodes towards the end of the month about the rebranding logo and the message to get feedback on their side. So if they're still fine-tuning the message and something, it's kind of silly because if you're still fine-tuning that and we down to that granular detail, finding out what that tagline is, message, and finalizing that logo, it's a bit jumping the gun, like finalizing a name now. It's like it's too soon.
Yeah, you really. Yeah, I mean, if you don't know what you're gonna get, it's probably a bad idea to name it. I think it's a good idea to name something after you've received it if you don't know what it is.
Does this apply to children or just to Dash?
I think it should equally apply to children, but with children, usually you know what you're going to get. I mean, you can expect a human of some kind.
Well, won't get into some conspiracy theories, but yeah, most cases, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a high probability for human. That's just what I'm suggesting. And humans are generally easier to name. I mean, you can go off, outside the bell curve if you want.
I think dogs are the easiest to name. Because they'll respond to anything. You call them anything insulting, they'll look at you.
Yeah, so ideally 2 syllables. There are names that work better than others. That's true.
Chuck, are you still doing your technical analysis? Because you was in a video interview recently, and they kind of took a line out of what you're saying and used that as the title, as kind of like clickbait, saying that Dash is going to go to 10K. And of course,
I saw that. So I am still doing some technical analysis, and I've been horribly wrong a lot. And sometimes I've been right, but I don't want to like brag or shame myself too much. So
as long as you're right more than 50% of the time, you're winning, right? That's how trading works.
Yeah. So I've been as good as 93% on a monthly basis, but as bad as 20% with my calls.
Yeah. Well, I don't really make calls because who the hell knows? But
what are you talking about? We got a bet, man.
I do make bets though. So late-ish last year, when Dash was somewhere around the price it is now, heaven forbid, I made a bet with Mark that by the end of March this year, it would exceed $1,000, and then it did very shortly thereafter. But now it's under, and so we're still on the fence of like who's going to be considered the winner of the bet. Like we don't. It's hard to tell. And then I also
say if it happened, it happened. I've seen betting sites.
All right, you heard that, Mark. You owe me money. But
it's about the terminology. It's about the wording.
Yes, of course, legal contracts. But as for the second bet I got going on is, I got a couple. I have a bet with feed bands that Dash will not be in the top 5 or 3 on CoinMarketCap within a couple months. Like I think he's like, oh, we're gonna put all these ads out there. It's gonna jack up the price. It's gonna be great. And I'm thinking it'll be a little bit more long game than that. So that's another one bet I have. And
I would agree with you on that.
Yes. And then the final bet. I mean, why don't you get in on it? Easy money, right? But and then the final bet I have is with Albert. He believes that Dash will be over 5,000 by the end of the year. I believe it will reach 10,000 by the end of the year, or at least I did last year. And so I made the bet, if it's below 5,000 at the end of the year, we're both sad. If it's above 5,000, I give him money. And if it hits 10K, he gives me money. So
okay.
We'll see how that turns out. I might be, 1 for 1.
It's very much dependent on how Bitcoin goes and if we're able to segregate ourselves from Bitcoin, right?
Exactly. It's hard to do technical analysis with the Bitcoin with the Mt. Gox thing. I think that's that's kind of what's caused.
The dumping of the coins.
Yeah.
Was it like 35,000 Bitcoin? It's crazy.
Yeah, that screws up all your technical
and probably
analysis.
more to come. Yeah.
Speaking of which, Justin, I've got a question for you.
Go ahead.
And only you can answer this because you did an article on it. So our friend Doomsday Bill, aka Bill Gates, was in the media again yesterday saying that the financial markets is inevitable. There's going to be a financial crisis. He can't predict the date, but it's going to be sometime soon. It's inevitable. However, last week he was saying like crypto is like the worst thing ever. However, if my memory serves me correct, I think Microsoft was one of the first big boys to accept Bitcoin like in 2014-15. So my question to Justin is, Bill Gates is a bit of a hypocrite, is he not?
Yes.
I could say yes, and I could also say no. I mean, going back to the Freakonomics episode podcast, one of the best Freakonomics episodes I've ever heard was it talked about the economics of making predictions and how there's just an incentive to make predictions left and right, because if you're wrong, no one remembers it, but if you're right, everyone remembers it. So Bill Gates, he's probably a hypocrite, but I would say he's smart enough that he knows he can just say whatever he wants and people are going to forget the bad things and remember where he's right on.
Is that the Peter Schiff strategy too?
Probably.
I think that's the Peter Schiff strategy. Yep.
But he does accept crypto as well, though, right? Just like Microsoft did. So there's
offload his gold,
there, right?
Yeah, you hedge your bets, right? You shoot, you don't shoot, you don't score.
The problem I have with Bill Gates is he's best buddies with Warren Buffett, the ultimate paper pushing dinosaur banker's friend that's holding up the fucking legacy system.
Yeah, be careful there, Mark, because 10 years from now, people are going to be saying, "Well, Mark's friends with Chuck, who's been in crypto forever.
He invented Skynet."
Right? There's going to be versions of you.
Are you really predicting that you and Mark will still be friends in 10 years?
He's gonna be a first-class citizen. I'm gonna be second class.
Yeah, he's gonna be on the blockchain. Mark's gonna be you're gonna be holding out, not getting a username.
I'm gonna be in one of the masternode citadels that's like has those walls, like build the wall, build the wall to keep out the second class.
Here's a question, right? What happens if I camp on the evolution username Stay Dashy?
Yeah.
I get there first.
Mhm.
What does Mark do with his new loss of meaning of life?
All right, so this has been the subject of much debate, which indicates to me that this is a problem that's definitely going to need to be solved, because we need to resolve the naming stuff. But initially, there will probably be a Wild West land grab for names, and so, because we probably won't have the mechanisms in place to manage everybody and the dispute resolutions and trademark and ownership like that. However, for both legal reasons and I think community reasons, we will definitely need to deal with this and offer good, sound, community-oriented solutions to deal with this. There's been a lot of ideas, and I have a personal favorite. And this is by no means a commitment from Dash, okay? So this is Chuck talking about what Chuck thinks is a good idea, just for a second, which is, I think it may be a good idea to have something like moderators who are able to vote in based on their own merits of succeeding in judgments, to award names back and forth to one another, to people. But that we should also set up a marketplace to sell names. And I've confirmed from a design and data perspective that all of those scenarios are very likely, are possible.
Can you have a
with
claim
the platform we're delivering?
Verify, like Twitter, like if you're a high profile individual, you can get that tick. And you could
that's KYC AML stuff. That's identity stuff. We're probably not going to get into identity stuff.
Right, that's it, Brian. If you take at do the math or at think about it, I'm going to be pissed. All right?
Problem is, what happens if you take at do the math and some successful math tutoring school wants to use that to accept payments, and at do the math is taken? Who has the greater claim to it? Has it been the guy who's been using that forever in high-profile media podcasts, etc., or is it going to be the business that's called at do the math?
Yeah. Well, here in America, we have trademark law, and trademark law covers a lot of that particular specific issue. Who gets a name? Who gets a claim to the name? The unfortunate thing about that is a lot of it's geographic in nature, so it's hard to determine, because like state by state, you can have the same business name of a business in the same industry registered in multiple states, but under different owners.
It's capitalism, is it not? Like it's just like registering a domain name. If I registered dash.org first, I don't care about trademark. You can buy that off me. That's capitalism. If you want to buy that name off me, that's fine.
That's right. Yep. And so that's the marketplace part, right? So you get the combination of marketplace and then adhering to trade. Uh-oh.
I don't know what's going on there.
I think
that wasn't me. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was Joel. He got caught in the matrix.
Yeah, BitShares did some kind of BitShares had like a bidding system. I don't know how that ever worked out, but yeah, somehow you would bid and the highest bidder would get the name, and there was other stuff involved in it.
So are we calling it here first? Dashforce is going to make a website where people could submit names and you can bid to buy them like domain names.
Yeah, I mean, that could be something I think that somebody could deliver. I don't know if Dash Core is going to take that on, but I would expect, based on the platform design, that somebody could deliver something like that, a marketplace for the names.
Yeah,
it would seem like if you were a masternode owner, there's other ways as well, like DashBoost is doing. But if you could, you could verify that this is you could get that username if you could verify that you have a masternode, or verify somehow like that. We had talked about before using the usernames that are already on the Dash forum, and have those kept for the people. Maybe to start off like that. So everybody on the Dash forum that has their username, you can verify that and keep that name.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It'd be interesting to see how many spammers come along, because it's kind of like first mover advantage again, just like domain names when they come up. Because all you need is an email address, right?
So keep in mind, the registration of a username is not going to be free. You have to pay. Somebody has to pay. The miner's got to get paid. If it's going to land on the blockchain, somebody's going to get paid.
Top it sure as was. Yeah, it was a very small fee.
Yeah, we'll keep it small, but it's not going to be free.
Yeah, that way you can't spam like yours.
So Chuck, are you very familiar with how Namecoin worked as well as Library?
Yeah, I like Library, and haven't dug into their specific like how they manage the usernames, but I've done a cursory look at both of them, and I've also looked at the Ethereum. Is it the ERC20 or there's a version of where you can choose your name for your address on Ethereum, and that's a registration process, and there's a minimum of 7 characters or something like that. So yeah, and of course ICANN is a good model to at least look at. There's a lot of interesting models, but I think one lesson that I get from all of this is that the naming of things is the next version of real estate, especially when you couple that with the blockchain. So I'm treating these as real estate, and I think that that there's a lot of models, corollary models there also. So you should expect for names to go up and down in value, and that they will have resale value. And squatting on certain names or collections of names is could be a market in and of itself, much like it is with the internet. But the only reason that it's that way with the internet is because we only have one internet. Dash is just going to be one blockchain among many. So the names won't be as valuable, in my opinion.
What about different
unless Dash becomes dominant? Yeah, so language compatibilities. Last time I checked, we were looking at supporting 20 languages out of the gate in terms of character support.
Yeah. When is Esperanto getting there?
I don't know if that's part of it. I don't know how many internet users use Esperanto.
Fun fact about Esperanto, the Esperanto word for money is Monero.
That's interesting.
Seriously, so if you had it translated into, if you had Dash Evolution's platform, all of it translated into Esperanto, you'd be sending people Monero. When you send people Dash, you'd be sending people Monero.
Right. I'm going to Monero you some Dash.
Dash you some Monero. I think people's heads are exploding right now.
So, Chuck, you said something about we weren't going to move into the identification thing because of KYC, AML. I thought Ryan had talked about that, moving into that area during the London presentation.
Yeah, well, I think what we're talking about is authentication mechanisms. And authentication allows you to identify yourself to the network, but Dash network isn't necessarily going to get into the space of collecting identity. I think that's one of the principles that we're working with. However, that doesn't prevent any merchant from developing an application that does, in fact, collect KYC AML information if they intend to do financial exchanges on their behalf on top of the Dash platform using Dash Drive and DAPI as their secured backend platform. So those are options.
Makes sense.
Justin, have you got any thoughts about Evolution? You looking forward to it? Over Christmas, the holidays, did you tell your friends, family, your colleagues about Dash?
I have been telling them about Dash a lot, almost to the point where I feel like some of them don't want to talk to me anymore because they're like, all he does is talk about Dash now. But I got a few excited about it. They're like, wow, it sounds really cool. I got to look into this more. And especially my friends that are already into cryptocurrency, but they just know about Bitcoin. They don't know too much. And I tell them about Dash and like, wow, it sounds really cool. So they go off and look into it more. So that's really good news.
Yeah, I kind of feel sorry for people because just across the whole crypto spectrum, there must over Christmas dinner or whatever, they must have been talking to their friends and family about cryptocurrency. So there must be a lot of people coming into the market at the high, and it's just now people are just hiding, burying their head in the sand. It's
my father-in-law literally bought the top. I'm telling you, I'm so sad because I've been talking to it. Now? How is he? He doesn't talk about it much right now.
He's not talking to people. Stop. So,
yeah. I just heard kind of chilled out about it.
Whenever I pitch it to people, I always I don't talk too much about the financial part of it. I talk more about the technology of it and just pitch it like in an economic sense, just how it makes more sense and it's just easier. That way, it's like whenever the price goes up or down, I tell them like, it is important to pay attention to that, but it's like that's not the reason you should primarily use it.
Yeah, but you should probably know that you like in your circles, like there's more economically interested people, right?
Also true.
Yeah, and just
So-
definitely people who are like looking to smash the state. That's
Right.
that's my experience because I got into Bitcoin middle of 2013, and not because someone just gave some to me. It was like $10, and then by the end of the year, it was like 120 or something like that. And I was like, "Oh, this is nice. I'm broke now. I'm not quite as broke." And so then I started working for Bitcoin all during 2014 and 15, 16, like during the big, those long, hard, those lean years,
Long,
the,
deep,
yeah, the grapes of wrath type thing, just dealing with all that. And so the way I got value out of it, for one thing, I spent it quickly or used it, sold it, whatever. But also I used it to get paid in ways that would be difficult. So, for example, if I wrote an article or something or did some copywriting or whatever I was doing, it was really, I did a few for fiat and then have to like mail me a check for like $50 at most. It's like, it was just such a pain in the butt. But this was just people sending me stuff, or they have to PayPal and then be massive fees. I just hated that. And so, yeah, this was pretty, this was something that was actually pretty, I got use out of it, right? And the local community around here did not skip a beat. Like no one got tired of it when the price went down. Just people kept on using it more and more. The only time the price tanking really mattered, this one guy I knew in 2013, I believe, he put all his money into Bitcoin and maxed out all his credit cards and just went all in. He was some young guy, some young coder guy. And then it went, and then he was set for life. And then during like every week at the Bitcoin meetup, he'd show up and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm selling again this week." Like, and we were all just like, "Oh, poor guy, man. He has to sell at this. Oh, it's $400, man. You got to sell." And, but he was having to sell all the way down, but he was still way better off than if he'd never done.
He would have been otherwise.
Yeah, it is better to have, hodled and dumped than to never have hodled at all. Or what is the expression?
That sounds good.
Yeah, but he's still doing pretty well. I mean, he had to actually get a job again, but he still was doing well. So amongst the true believers, market crash.
Well,
right, and that's the chasm, I think, between people. Like you have people who understand the basics of economics and are willing to like look at their world and see the forces of economics happening around them. And then you got other people who are like, "Whoa, what's the price? How's it doing? Did it go up? Is my money safe?" And they can't ride out any dips. And if they buy the tops, they're going to be freaking out and texting you every day, like, "What's going on? What's going on?" Like, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, I think 2018-19, we're actually due a recession. Just if you follow wealth cycles, every like 8 to 9 years, there's a recession, a pullback. And the last time we had our financial crisis was 2008. And the safe haven asset then was gold and silver. If you saw what happened in 2008, people made an absolute killing. Now, since then, it's been on a massive downtrend. Yeah. However, it's not 2008 anymore. It's 2018. And with all these youngsters with their phones, we're much more digitally connected, including the financial system, right? So if there's going to be some kind of financial calamity, I don't think now people are going to rush to gold and silver, although a lot of people are talking about silver again recently, but that's another conversation. But I think people are going to go straight to crypto more because they know we can spend it online. We're living in a borderless digital world now. I still think people will still use gold and silver as a safe haven asset, but I think in terms of institutional money, smart money, they're going to know crypto's the place to go. And then that's when we start talking about that's the dinosaur tipping point.
Right. Max Kaiser agrees with you. There's a great series on YouTube called The Hidden Secrets of Money by Mike Maloney. He also would agree with you. He runs goldsilver.com, also a gold, silver, and crypto, I think now proponent. He was in Anarchapulco too.
Yeah. So basically, Mark's calling it now. 2019, the fiat banking system is going to everyone's going to hemorrhage money. It's all going straight into Tron.
We're due a recession, but I mean, like so many people are saying this. I mean, I think this has been happening like 4 or 5 times now consistently. In fact, in some ways, we're kind of overdue. So really, it should be in 2018. but like you can't really pinpoint these things when you know it's going to tip over. They tried doing testing the banks and stuff all the time, especially in Europe, and I think they're still failing over there as well. I know Italy's got big problems with their banking system, but like just like in 2008 when they were saying, oh, the banking system is too connected, like now it's even more connected on a global level. The debt's higher, so the situation that actually caused it last time is actually so much worse. And the thing is,
It's just worse, yeah. And there's
we
no
didn't actually
bailout.
fix the problem. We just extended it. We just extend and pretend like the problem's fixed, right? So like we never actually resolved the
Extend
problem.
and pretend. That doesn't sound right somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the way Max Kaiser puts it, he's like, all that debt that's out there, all this printing presses that are running just wildly, all that money's going to get sucked up by the black hole that is crypto, and then crypto is going to be representing all this value of the future. That's what I've heard Max Kaiser say, and then I think Mike Maloney he goes into great detail from a historical perspective that I think is great of, these cycles that continuously are occurring, what signals to look for, what happened in the past, how they dealt with things in the past, why this bank exists in this way, why these rules exist in these ways. Crypto just kind of throws a wrench in all of that and offers the world something better that works better for the people. And the elitists hate it because they can't control it, manipulate it, shut it down. And now we see it, right? JP Morgan saying, oh, I guess they're a threat after all, after trying to call it a fraud and dump it down as much as he could so he could get his hands on it, right? That happened with JP Morgan. So
it's funny you should say that. Around. They said the same thing about silver at the same time of financial crisis last year. And there was some news that came out about JP Morgan that all this during this whole downtime, they've been shorting the market, but they've actually been collecting physical silver as well. So they've been down the market. So it's like game, set, and match. They just do it over and over and over again. And like extend to pretend, the quantitative easing, they've just been pumping this money, free money, and it's just a failed experiment. The debt's, Justin, like, chip in, my friend. You're the economics expert here. Like, I'm singing the gospel to you here, right?
I love this. You guys couldn't have said it better. Like, I agree with all of that. And the Fed's raising interest rates. The U.S. Federal Reserve, they're beginning to raise interest rates. The EU, the European Central Bank, they're still buying assets, but they were planning to buy more. They recently came out saying that they're going to maybe slow down. So it's starting to go on the reversal. And as interest rates rise, it's just going to cause all the malinvestments that were previously made to be revealed. And as that happens, that's going to be the tipping point. Whenever all these bad investments start to fail, you start to realize, like, well, we spent way too much on debt and we just can't afford these higher interest rates anymore. And like, I forget who said it, but someone just said how the fact that like cryptocurrencies offer an alternative, whereas before everyone raised the interest rates, you couldn't go anywhere else other than cash or gold and silver or like some.
You were trapped.
Yeah. Whereas now it's like, there's cryptocurrencies.
Right. When I realized, it was shortly after reading the Bitcoin white paper and that Bitcoin book that went into Venezuela, and it was Aaron Koenig's book. But he talks about how I realized at some point that this is the first time in history where the fiat controllers who traditionally tank or overinflate or destroy our currency in some way, shape, or form, first time we have an exit strategy that's not controlled by yet another nationalized entity.
It's funny. Some of the first work I did in the crypto sphere was I did the copywriting for the Plan B flyers, the Bitcoin Plan B. And so, that was way back. And apparently I did a good job because he sent me double the Bitcoin I quoted him at.
But Plan B didn't work, did it? So now we're on Plan D, baby.
Yeah, which one's Plan C? Was that
Cardano?
I don't know.
Who knows?
Plan D. We're on Plan D. It's like, multiple just going down the list. And that it's funny to say, but there is a little bit of truth to that, because I noticed in the massive surge during the late 2017, obviously Bitcoin was unusable with $30 fees, etc. Then Ethereum was going on with its cat infestation around that time, and also it's funny that this is not even a joke. It is, and it was unusable, and people just went down the Coinbase, like real plan A, plan B, plan C.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
down
coin market cap.
Litecoin, and then Litecoin's fee spiked. The median fee, not even the average fee. The median fee was like $1.10 or something like that per Litecoin transaction. And as Chuck's esteemed colleague, Dr. Darren Tapp, was noting, it wasn't just that the blocks weren't really full, but there weren't enough nodes to broadcast all the transactions. So Litecoin transactions were being dropped at that point. They were not being broadcast to the network because there weren't enough nodes to do so. And so right down the list, bam, 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 congestion. And so probably where does the buck stop, right? Where does the demand flow to a network that can support it? Bitcoin can't support it. Ethereum can't support it. Litecoin at that time could not support it for the brief window of time. How far do you go down until you hit Dash and its massive master network of shock absorbers, large block size, block intervals, etc.? Like, at what point does all the demand crush every single coin, and then it, is Dash like the 300 Spartans?
Yeah,
just
I like that.
Holding the line.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean, some of the coins are going to be under capacity. Some will be over capacity. And I think the ones that succeed are going to be in that Goldilocks zone, but the ones that are over and under capacity are going to have to go through their failure cycles, I think. But it's not going to happen like in that linear fashion. It's going to happen very organically with sporadic growths, intermittent growths, intermittent explosions of growth in certain areas of geography and industry and retail. I think when we really have a reasonable solution that closes the loop on the payment cycle from supplier to retail outlet provider to employees and back into supplier purchases, if we can close that loop, then whatever token is able to market that will win. And I guess that's kind of why we're targeting the two parts of that cycle simultaneously.
I would agree with that. Okay, what do you think about this? So I was in this 2-hour meeting yesterday with really, I can't say it's like one of the biggest POS solutions. And I was talking about Dash integration there, and they just said, well, look, they've got customers from everything from coffee shops to bars to restaurants to everything. They've got to support everyone, just accounting, tax things, everything. And they said, we're aware of cryptocurrency. We see the news, PayPal's interested in cryptocurrency and this sort of stuff, but we have to look after our customers. And when we do our research and we speak to people on the street, even the diehard crypto fans, they're not really particularly willing to depart with their cryptocurrency and spend it at the merchants.
Yeah, this is Gresham's law taking effect.
Yeah, so like, what do you guys think about that? Because when they raised that issue to me, I said, well, there's always going to be a transitional phase, but you have to be a part of it, because if you're a payment processor, right, a POS solution, you either get involved or you become obsolete, and there's no difficulty, because you can still offer that legacy, Visa, MasterCard system and have this as an additional. So if you don't do that, and then the market starts to come across, then there's always going to be that tipping point. But there's no harm not to offer it. You're actually offering additional value, not taking away.
From a business perspective, there is harm. If you jump in too early, you've spent too much. If you jump in too late, you didn't spend enough at the right time. So
yeah. Well, this was the interesting point. They said at the moment there's lots of payment processors working with cryptocurrency, but a lot of them seem to be independent, and they're starting to reinvent the wheel and start their own thing, which takes a lot of time, development, and investment and money. When really it's the big boys that have huge market share already. Now, if you can develop this is where Chuck's going to get excited. Now they can plug things into their APIs and stuff. If you get that, they can integrate that, and the development's done. So like, really should be going to the head of the snake, but they see cryptocurrencies doing things in reverse. They're getting independent people starting from the bottom, and then probably getting small scale businesses like arts and crafts stores and stuff. When really it's the everyday businesses that people use, whether it's Amazon for your presents and gifts, right, Uber getting transport, or just you
keep in mind,
Starbucks coffee
industry,
every day.
every revolutionary industry always started off as a craft industry. It didn't become industrialized until, of course, after the industrialized revolution. But everything goes through this industrialized phase, but not until it's after the craft phase. Because the craftsmen have to work out their craft well enough that it's mature and can be industrialized, so that they can hand off and automate certain parts of it. And we're just not there yet. But that's why I think Dash is in a good position, because we're trying to be one of those, transitional type of coins. We're trying to move away from craft into, industrialized coin usage.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that makes me hopeful about Dash is, from my perspective on the ground here in New Hampshire, where I was not the only one by far living on Bitcoin back in the day. And just people, for example, at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, PorcFest, was it the 18th to 24th of June? Mark your calendars. Chuck's going to try to make it, hopefully.
I'm trying to make it.
I'll be there as well.
Yes.
Can talk to you about economics.
Cool.
All right.
I remember when I first went summer of 2014, and I didn't bring any fiat currency. I only brought my Bitcoin wallet, and I just lived the whole week off of that. Eating stuff, buying things, whatever, only on Bitcoin. And it's been that way for a few years. And around here, I mean, there's places that rent apartments for Dash in the Manchester area. You can just pay rent with Dash. You can buy. There was a gas station. I believe they might have recently sold it that took crypto. There's bunch of different shops. There's it can happen here. And I like how I've noticed how it was all about Bitcoin, because who cares about the other coins if this is what you're using? Then when you couldn't use Bitcoin, it pretty much unequivocally shifted to Dash. There was a little moment where it was like, well, we'll take Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then pretty soon that didn't work out. And then now it's like all the markets, 80% or more crypto stuff is in Dash. All these businesses take Dash, 80% or more in Dash. Everything.
I think that's great.
Yeah, it's all the grassroots thing, like you're saying, like the craftsmen. And you've seen, like in Venezuela, for example, everyone's on Dash. It's starting to be used a lot by the people that don't matter when you go to the top down, but it's really what influences the top down, right? Is the ground up. And it's like the top and the bottom going up to meet each other.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because we've kind of got like an inverted pyramid going on. Whereas before you got the central bank at the top and it sort of trickles down to the high street banks and then down to the people. At the moment, we've kind of got the inverse. So basically the people that need cryptocurrency the most, Venezuela, Zimbabwe and stuff, Cuba Cash, we're doing all this stuff. And it's actually going to top people first. And then it's trickling down to like civil.
That's the beautiful thing. Yeah, these finance, these elitists, they're going to be late to the party. That's why I always said, like, America's going to be last to this party in terms of worlds, like the global, because it's just like we have a functioning banking system. Like it works for most people.
And that's when I wrote a few articles. One is on why the first world doesn't really need crypto that much. I mean, it helps, but it's mostly for crazy people like me who like think this is cool and don't like the Federal Reserve, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it could be moral motivations.
I don't need it at all. I just really want it, and that's the difference. And then you have people in places in the world that really need it.
Wait a second. Are you Chuck, Joel? Are you trying to tell me that the third world, the third world, is going to become the new 1%? Is that what you're trying to tell me? That's what it sounds like.
Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? Wouldn't that be like karma, the ultimate payback of karma to the ones who have destroyed currency over these generations?
Well, think about it, right? Think about it. You got the Americas. What the hell does that matter in terms of the old European empires, right? Europe was, the global powerhouse.
Britannia rules the world.
You had these massive European empires that then just came to the New World or Africa or wherever and set up colonies because they just sort of like wanted the resources or the playthings of what the colonies were. But they were the centers of everything. And then now you got New World former colonies, and not just talking about in like the US perspective, but you got all around the world. Now it's the power shifted away from places like that. For example, even ignoring the US, what about like Canada and Australia and places like that are now doing very well. And that same upset can still happen. That's what I like about crypto is every time. Like one thing I've noticed is here's an odd metaphor perhaps, but every time, so there used to be, was it the digital cash Slack? It was the Dash community was all in the digital cash Slack, and it was very vibrant, happy community. Well, not happy, it was a very vibrant community. There's a few toxic players that caused the whole thing to go kaput, and then they dispersed, and then Tao Satoshi started the Dash Nation Slack channel, and then a lot of people moved over there. And then after that happened, then after that became unusable for Slack related reasons, it moved to the Dash Nation Discord channel. Each upset shook out a few people. You lost a few along the way, right? So it's kind of like when you're on a late night pub crawl with your friends, and like each pub you're like, hey, where'd John go? Well, we must have gone home. Whatever. You like lose a couple at each stop, and so every time you upset the entire financial system, especially in a completely different way like crypto's done, you shake out a lot of the old people that had this under control, and you get a new group of faces. Like the crypto millionaires, there's a bunch of people there that, like, I remember from just my own perspective in the libertarian movement, I've noticed there was just a lot of broke people, right? It was either just a lot of broke people trying to make a difference on the ground level, and then you had a few big benefactors like Charles and David Koch who'd made massive entrepreneurial ventures that were then trying to donate back into that whole stuff. But really, especially the cutting edge anarchist type parts of the libertarian movement were just always the broke parts of the movement. And then now there's a lot of
they
money.
call them activist investors.
Yes, there's a lot of money in those fringes now. Like you have like people, you're just like Roger Ver, right? He's one of the more hardcore hardliners as far as the philosophical underpinnings of libertarianism. He's very against any kind of government and is very vocal about that. And someone like him would have pretty much been broke, or in the old days, but then he hears about Bitcoin, he buys a bunch, it goes way to the moon. Now he's loaded as anything, and there's all this money able to be thrown at this cause. So just as far as that perspective, I've seen a big switching of the wealth. Now some of the most economically disadvantaged of the first world political groups is now very economically advantaged. And so I can just see that repeating everywhere else, where you have something like, for example, you have Venezuela, one of the richest countries in Latin America, that just gets turned on its head by the failure of their financial system, among others, and now is like in some cases, one of the poor ones that still has these vestiges of a rich country. But then those vestiges of the rich country are getting into Dash. So could we see another flippening in Venezuela from being top dog to, hellhole to then back to top dog?
Is it going to be like Slumdog Millionaire Volume 2?
Yes.
Chuck, no, Brian, let's get you into the mix. There's a couple comments in the Q&A. So actually, these guys sound familiar. The Free Thought Project, I know that from somewhere. Anyway, the Free Thought Project says...
I was helping them submit their proposal just now.
Ah, okay. Oh, great. Thank you for watching, guys. Well, the Free Thought Project says transfer of wealth back to the people, the ultimate blow to oligarchs. Love it. And this one's particularly for you, Brian. Stephen K says, gold bought me my house when the banking system was tossing people into the streets. Hoping the same protection of value of crypto as debt weighs in again. Now, me and Brian were big precious metals guys, and we rode the precious metals wave in the last financial crisis.
Hey, me too. I got this silver round that says "End the Fed" on it.
I've got that one.
So, Brian, would you agree with that? Because we rode that wave last time. Would you agree that the crypto is going to be the new wave if in the next recession, whenever it happens?
I hope so. And I did see somebody on CNBC the other day talking about that, and how crypto could play that. Be a part of that. They don't. We don't know, but could be.
But when there's bank runs, like Chuck said, Mike Baloney is such a great source of information. And myself being a European, seeing firsthand in Cyprus things that happened, and we've seen in India as well. Whenever there's some form of currency crisis, people queue up to ATMs, right? There's a bank run, but they never have enough money in the banks to facilitate, right? Because they don't hold that stuff in there. It's fractional reserve banking, right? And that's why they call it a bank run. So like there's no money there. But actually, if you hold in the crypto yourself, then really you don't really have to panic. It's just being in that dire situation when there is a financial meltdown. Actually, as long as the people you're bartering with and buying stuff can accept crypto, like download a wallet, you're going to be fine. I mean, people in Cyprus were going to gold and silver, but it was they're on an island. It's scarce, but you can't purchase things with it. I mean, gold and silver, you can't buy things online with that now, can you? It's like I said, it's 2018, and this generation are just of a different mindset. This is the Netflix. They buy their stuff on applications, not store-based. The high street stores are closing down, and everything's moving to web-based application platforms.
Yeah. For that scenario to happen, the infrastructure has to be built out. And I just got an idea for, speaking of all that, for the Dash Force Merchant Adoption Program. I was going to include a bonus for if you signed up like gold and silver places or pawn shops that sold gold and silver. But another one that somebody mentioned, Joel, will be gas stations. We should probably give a bonus of people, because the more gas stations and stuff like that, that's part of the infrastructure to where, if there's a big crash and you can buy gas and other products with crypto, that will help that, which y'all were talking about.
I think we need to enlist payroll organizations like ADP and things like that to get in the supply chain a little bit. Bitwage is already on board.
Yeah, because if there's like hyperinflation, people need that, to be able to switch. I believe people should have the freedom, the right to choose how they want to pay for things. And if you're a business owner, you want to help facilitate your customers and give them the freedom and the flexibility to accept different payments, because the more you cater to your customers, the better you're going to do as a business. So, yeah,
probably like bodegas and stuff would be another thing to have a smaller bonus. Because if you got gas, food, I mean, that's.
But we do know things are going more electric. So for all you tech-loving fans out there that watch CES 2018, there's all these car manufacturers, and all it is electric car, electric car, electric car, electric car. And most of them are prototypes, but like, you get people like the Volkswagen stuff, they come out and said, oh, here's our new prototype. But they're like, oh yeah, but this there's no steering wheel or anything. Comes out this is in production line. It come out in 2022. But, our 15 other cars in our roadmap that we're developing, they're all electric. Like all the manufacturers are building electric cars. And when we had Karen from BlockCypher, and she was talking about NREL and the energy system, and when Chuck on last time was talking about this, so like Tesla's building those smart meters, and now people like IKEA and everyone else are building these smart meters in their homes because they know that's the future. So really, like, it's kind of like people taking, like power back, really. It's a weird way how it's working. Whereas before, we've always been dependent on like third-party services. Now, depending where you live on the world, if you're living somewhere nice with a nice climate and you can have solar panels and stuff, that's great. The climate here is not so good. So, I have to rely on my own solar panel.
Well, that's funny. Is I grew up, we're talking about radical technology, and solar technology is not quite as radical anymore, but I grew up in a ranch in Mexico in the early 90s. And when I was like 4 or 5 years old, we only had oil lamps and no electricity because they just didn't have a grid up there. And then because my dad's an electrical engineer, he put up a whole solar panel system on the roofs. And so basically my whole life from like, 5 years old to 6 to 16 years old was all in a completely solar powered compound up in the mountains. Not because, we're crazy hippies, man, or like anything like that, but just because that's what you need to get power up there. And so that kind of reminds me with the whole crypto thing of like, what if people, can you imagine electric cars being popular in some really remote areas of the world where just getting the oil pipelines out there, getting tankers in or whatever is just not that feasible, but everyone has some sun, especially out in the desert, and you can just have a battery going that then you can charge your car on. Like this might be the same thing with crypto as well. You don't have the big banking infrastructure, but you do have, basic internet connectivity, and you do have a smartphone, and there you go.
One idea I'd like to prototype is an interface for self-driving vehicles that bid on parking spots in downtown zones.
Wow. Have you seen people talking about
something like that already? Yeah, I think I've seen something like that's already. I don't know if it's crypto blockchain based, but I did see something like that. Yeah, they're already coming up with that. It'd be great to get the
It's going to be
blockchain.
necessary.
Well, they're kind of envisioning a world where it's actually going to be like autonomous. So like car ownership will be a thing of the past. So you're going to be sharing vehicles with other people, or people. They're even talking about doing business meetings because there's no steering wheel in a lot of these cars that are showcased at CES. So basically, they're saying the new like co-working space is a car. So you get in and you can actually work in an office space as it's driving around, like get a nice bit of scenery. Like, oh, that's great. Like, it's amazing.
That's another funny thing to think about because in the comments, Schnupdog just said, "What about adult businesses?" Well, it's like one of the most awkward things about adult activities in the back of a cab is there's a human driver in there too. So do the math.
Yeah, I want one of those like Johnny cabs from like Total Recall. Johnny cab, they just look awesome. But
we should probably wrap up. But I had a question for Chuck. So there's going to be a demonstration here. I believe you said there was going to be 3 different demonstrations coming out. The first one was going to be for the contact list. Do you know what the next ones will be? The next video?
We're gonna so we haven't specifically outlined exactly what we're gonna deliver, but I know that the first one is gonna be that contact list demo. After that, I mean, it depends on what the team is ready to demonstrate. We have internal monthly demos now, at least on the front end team. My hope is that other teams will take that on, and then we'll iterate. And when I think as a team, multi teams agree this is worth showing the public, then I think we'll probably talk about doing that. So there's just other Scrum teams that are working on different pieces, and my hope is that they will also deliver some kind of prototype videos. That's something I'm advocating for, but nobody's committed to that.
Is there any hints about what those may be? Or
well, I mean, we've got it's worthwhile to demonstrate the DAPI. It's worthwhile to consider demonstrating Dash Drive, uniquely. I saw a pretty interesting tool that Alex Werner is working on that. I don't know if sorry, Alex. I'm going to say it's a Keybase replacement based on Dash. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Keybase.
Yeah.
Yes. I use it all the time.
Yeah, we're all on Keybase.
Oddly enough, Keybase.
I don't know where it's at. It's just something that he's playing around with. But I was really excited to see it, and here I am, kind of dropping bombs. But we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. It may be nothing, but those kinds of things are just getting more and more possible. As we flesh out the platform. There's so many more ideas. We're building a new realm here, a new realm of opportunity.
Sign and verify messages with dude, it's going to be crazy. Like, there's so much possibility. It's like endless possibility. That you should tie that into the tagline of Dash Evolution, whatever it's going to be called, like unlimited possibilities with the DAPI. But right,
yeah, freedom. It's all about freedom.
Freedom, financial freedom, baby, financial independence. All thanks to Dash Digital Cash. The third world of the world, the new 1%ers. We're gonna become. Oh, yeah.
I'll leave a final metaphor with that. Who here has seen? Have any of you guys seen Black Panther yet?
No.
It
looks good. Looks good.
Yeah, it's a pretty entertaining movie. The interesting thing about that is it takes place in the fictional country of Wakanda in Africa. That's like a super advanced technocracy above any of the first world nations, and it's something like it's like a thing on its 10 because a lot of people tend to think about those certain regions of Africa in particular as being sort of behind the times or the recipients of aid or things like that. And at the end of the movie, they're talking about
don't spoil it.
Okay, whatever. But basically, the point is it's sort of like on its head that traditional groups that you would not see as being the new wealthy elite are now the new wealthy elite. And something like that couldn't, like, for example, Ghana is doing a lot for Dash adoption right now. What happens when people in Ghana adopt Dash and other cryptocurrencies possibly at a much higher scale and than everywhere else? And then the bottom falls out of the global financial system, but they're doing great. Now who's going to be trying to move to Ghana, for example? I mean, this thing could happen a lot quicker than you might see. One thing that I remember outside of crypto in that whole regard is in the post-colonial era, Botswana has had an economy that's grown faster than just about anywhere else in the world. because it had a free democratic system and relatively little turmoil. And it's a little sandy. It's like, I'm not going to talk smack, but it doesn't have a lot of natural resources. There's no reason for it to be wealthy other than freedom, and it's done pretty well. It's gone from
Are you saying the free market works?
I think so. I totally think so. So that's without crypto. It's still having to deal with the old rigged financial systems. So what if a country like Botswana can have like a per capita GDP somewhere around where Mexico is at, or a little bit under, but close to it, after just like 50 or 60 years, whatever it's been in the post-colonial era, with no help, no massive natural resources, nothing like that. If that can happen, can you imagine what crypto can do? It can advance that timeline to like 1/5 of that. Like say in 10 years, you could have a place like Ghana or Venezuela being the new place to be that everyone wants to live in the world.
Oh, I mean, yeah. On that note,
cool to me.
Keep an eye on Puerto Rico. I think there's some stuff going on there.
I was thinking Roger Ver's got his little island or whatever they're setting up somewhere too. There's a couple of those places. Puerto Rico,
Land,
New Hampshire.
I'll believe it when I free it.
Excellent. Okay. Right. Okay. So, right. I guess we're going to wrap up then. So, I'm sure most of the people viewing are old school viewers, but if this is your first time viewing, we have a Discord community channel, dashchat.org, and we have an after party where we have 10 open spaces. So if you go to dashchat.org and you join and say, hey, I'd like to join the after party, we'll try and add you in. It's first come, first serve. So be quick. And you can talk to us, ask us questions, and that'd be great. Thank you to Chuck and Justin for being our guests and joining us.
Good to meet you, Justin.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this podcast. We've covered a lot of topics. It's been fantastic. We do this podcast every Friday. So 3 p.m. EST, 8 p.m. UTC or GMT if you're in the UK. And so we're here, same dash channel, same dash channel, same dash time. So yeah, please come and join us. There's a whole information war out there. So you take care out there in the crypto wars. And remember, you are the resistance.
There's some info wars going on.
Stay dashy.
Globalist.